to share another video for children and for the young at heart. Today we're going to hear a story called The Reluctant Dragon, which is written by Kenneth Grahame and adapted for a puppetry presentation. Here's the cover of the book, where we see pictured the dragon and the shepherd boy, who are the main characters. The boy lives in the English countryside, and the story takes place long, long ago. We've also incorporated some ideas from the boy's favorite book, St. George and the Dragon. You can also get this book out of the library, and it's retold by Margaret Harges. Finally, we just have to mention the boy and the shepherd like to quote Shakespeare. This is the cover of a book of the collected works of Shakespeare, and they quote from the play Hamlet. After the show is over, I hope that you enjoy talking about your favorite ideas and scenes with your friends and family or whomever you're watching with. There'll certainly be a lot of ideas to share. Before we begin, I'd like to thank my dear friends and storytellers, Callie Otten, who's our narrator, Betty Robbins, who plays the dragon and also made many extra costumes, Jackie Collison, who makes her debut as the fairy, Joe Wicker, who plays the princess/warrior, Eris Loudermilk, who ran the video and also helped make the scenery, and a special shout out to Sharon Tenty, who helped fill in sometimes on videotaping. I will play the show.
Long ago, might have been hundreds of years ago, in a cottage near the little English village, lived a young shepherd who fancied himself a knight. Now the young man spent his days up on the wide, low hills with only the blue skies, fluffy white clouds, and sheep for company, and the friendly chattering world out of sight and hearing. With so much time on his hands, the sheep were not much of a bother at all. He spent much of his time with his head buried in books he had borrowed from friendly gentry and interested parsons roundabout. His favorite legend of late was that of St. George and the Dragon. How often the boy imagined that he was the brave and faithful hero of the tale. You see, a certain Princess Una had sought him out to battle a dreadful dragon that was ravaging her homeland. All the others, the king and the queen of the country and the townspeople, had shut themselves inside the walls of a castle that was so frightened. But Una had set out alone to look for a champion who would face the terrible dragon, who was so huge and fearsome that his tail swept the land almost half a mile behind him. Full of courage and virtue, St. George slays the deadly dragon after a series of long and terrible battles, earning the hand of the princess. The whole thing began to be very real, and one day he began to hear some faint noises up by the cave on the hill by the pasture, like heavy sighs with grunts and snoring. Heavy, honest snoring. The sheep were grazing peacefully, so the boy headed up to have a look. After ambling up the hill, he cast a careful look around by the rocks so as not to be seen, and saw, sticking halfway out of the cave, a dragon. The boy ran back down the hill and had a cup of tea and scratched his head, wondering if he was quite awake. He pinched himself and knew he was quite awake, pondered a little, and resolved to go back the next day to make sure he was in fact not dreaming. The next day, after he had his late afternoon tea, the boy strolled up the chalky track that led to the summit, and there he was. The dragon seemed to be enjoying the cool of the evening. As the boy approached, he hears the beast purring contentedly.
Dragon! Oh, dragon! Hello, dragon! None of my books ever told me that dragons purred.
I'm a different sort of dragon. Now don't you start shooting arrows at me.
Don't worry. I'm not gonna shoot arrows or hit you. So, are you gonna stay here long?
Can't see why not. I'm a safe distance from the other fellas, you know. The earnest dragons who love to rampage, skirmish, scour the desert sands, pace the margin of the sea, chase knights all over the place, and devour decimals. Plus, I like the view of the country. If it weren't for the people who will undoubtedly eventually find me out and demand that I come forth for a great romping, I would be inclined to settle down here. Plus, I have a lot on my mind, and this is a lovely spot for thinking and sleeping. Truth is, I'm a bit complacent.
Complacent? You mean you would rather sit and ponder than run and play?
Yep, that's right.
I see. So, what do you think about?
Did you ever, for fun, try to take up poetry? Verses, you know?
Of course I have. That's how I believe I came to find you. You sort of jumped off the page, you know. Except,
Except what?
well, you are not exactly what we expected.
Well, I hope you weren't disappointed.
Oh no, the truth is, I am so often by myself. It is a fine thing to have discovered someone else to talk to who also likes to read, even if you are a dragon.
I just want to be myself, you see. It becomes a little tiresome, that whole quest thing that humans are so fond of. What has humankind done, after all, to improve things? They are just past.
Well, they built roads
Yeah, that's that.
and schools,
Yes, roads and schools.
and, you know, there's irrigation, plumbing, and, of course, printing of books.
Well then, roads, schools, irrigation, plumbing, printing, what have they done besides all that? If they ever learned how to stop warring and pilferaging, now that would be something. A dragon I am, but I will be myself, not a creature who exists simply to represent everything they hate in themselves, and therefore be a huge target. I just want to be the one to determine who I will be.
Ah, yes, to be or not to be, that is the question.
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune,
Or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them.
to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end 1,000 natural shocks that dragon flesh is heir to.
'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished.
To die, to sleep, perchance to dream,
Aye, there's the rub.
for in the sleep of death, what dreams may come.
When we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause.
Yes, must give us pause. Jolly good, my boy, jolly good. I love Shakespeare. Haven't had so much fun in a long time. Much better than bearing arms, don't you think?
Well, quite honestly, I like to bandy about words, but I do look forward to the day I take on my dragon. Alas, I must be off now. My mother will not allow my dinner to get cold without worrying about me.
Can't you come up here and dine or something tomorrow? Only, of course, if there's nothing better to do.
Oh yes, tomorrow then. I fear the village will find out about the poor fellow, and he'll be run out of town, or worse. According to their way of looking at him, he's a scourge, a pest, and a baneful monster.
That evening, the boy dined with his parents and heard from his father that the villagers discovered a dragon on the hillside. How quickly his fears became a reality. He knew he had to act soon and would have to have a serious conversation with the dragon. But he also knew there would be several committee meetings before they ever figured out what action to take, so he could wait for dinner with the dragon tomorrow to speak to him. The next day, after his afternoon tea, He strolled up the hill to the cave.
Hello, dragon.
Good evening, boy. What news do you bring? What is that chattering and shoving about down yonder in the town below? Is it the players, or fairs, or circus, or what?
Well, no, my friend. It is bad news, I'm afraid. It's all up, dragon. You've been found out, and the villagers are no doubt making a plan for your demise. It will not take very long, for they have little imagination.
They will look for a courageous knight who needs to prove his valor in order to win a princess. You know the story. This is too awful. I won't see him, and that's that.
You've got to fight sometime, so you better get it over with, and then we can go on with our sonnets.
There's a respect that makes calamity so long-lived, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time,
The oppressor's wrong,
the proud man's insult,
the pangs of unvalued love,
the law's delay,
the insolence of office,
the spurns one receives from unworthy persons,
who would burdens bear,
to grunt and sweat under such a weary life. I say, plainly, I will not fight.
The boy dropped down in a heap on a rock, totally discouraged.
Now what are we going to do? If you do not fight, they will simply slay you as you doze in the sun.
Oh, I think not. You'll be able to arrange something. I have every confidence in you. You are such a manager. Just run along. There's a dear chap, and make it all right. I leave it entirely to you.
Ah, brother. Now would be a perfect time for a magic fairy to appear. That's the only chance we'll have.
Fairy? Did someone say fairy?
Oh,
Well, here I am. What seems to be the problem?
oh my goodness, you're just in time. Well, this dragon is a dear friend of mine, and I tell you, he's a good dragon. The villagers have surely convened by now with a plan for his demise. How silly these people are when they get an idea in their heads. But the fact is, he's not a fighter, but quite cultivated. Quotes Shakespeare and the like. His only fault, methinks, is he's that a bit complacent.
I see. I like a fellow who sticks up for his friends. I'm sure the dragon has good points, even if he is a bit, complacent. Let me think a minute.
I sure hope she can come up with something.
I think I have just the thing.
Go on.
Well, I believe we can give the people what they want, which is, after all, a sort of spectacle or entertainment with just a bit of trickery. Would you, dragon, be willing to pretend to fight? Have the boy dress up in armor and pretend to slay you, then let everyone go their merry way.
Now that's a great idea.
Now, dragon, tell us your soft spots where, and please understand, I'm asking you with all dignity and respect, where you can be penetrated by a sword without pain or death.
Well, right here under the arms and through any scale.
Well then, my dreams come true. I get to slay a dragon, to band me both fine words and silver swords in a fortnight. Uh-oh, the villagers arrive. Fairy, make me some armor with your magic, and if you can, wings so I can fly about and give them a row.
This will take some exertion, I'm afraid, but is a worthy sacrifice to soothe the savage beast.
Bear up, dragon. Who knows? You might actually enjoy yourself.
Well, let's get on with it. Here come the villagers.
Wait, stop the music.
What now?
How could we have forgotten? I need a princess to impress with my bravery and skill.
Oh, sorry. I guess I lost my head. Very well then.
I am not exactly dressed properly for a battle.
Whatever do you mean? You look quite magnificent.
I fully intend to bear arms as well, and that is why I was conjured up. And in this really dress and hoop skirt, I might trip and end up quite impaired. Hold on while I prepare myself.
1.
It's time.
Wait, hold the music.
Who are you?
Yes, who are you? We are the,
The
National
National
Dragon
Dragon
Front.
Front. I thought we were the United Front of Dragons.
No, no, no. We are the dragons of the United National Front.
Come now, gather yourselves and tell us, what is your purpose here?
We have come to support you in this new way of doing sport. We are tired of rampaging, romping, and skirmishing, and scouring desert sands, and pacing the margin of the sea, chasing knights and devouring damsels.
I couldn't agree more. Well, take your place on the sidelines then, and make like this is really a fight to the death. You know, of course, this is just pretend. Who knows? The crowd may be so pleased, they might invite us all to the great banquet.
Music!
It's
time!
The dragon employed himself in giving a romping performance for the benefit of the crowd. Romping, it should be noted, consists of running around and around in a wide circle and sending waves and ripples of movement along the whole length of his spine. The effect was quite pleasing, and now the boy and the princess began to move back and forth from opposite sides so as to confuse the dragon and leave open his vulnerable points. As the arrows shot past, the dragon would deliver vicious snaps, all the while flicking his tail till it cracked like a great whip. They fought with similar tactics for 3 rounds, and it all seemed very genuine when finally, in a whirl of confusion of spines, claws, tail, and flying bits of turf, the dust cleared away, and Dragon was down. The boy and the princess stood astride of him proudly. The boy was a little worried that this was not an act, but the dragon raised his head with a solemn wink and collapsed again.
1.
So did we do him in?
Yes, it is done. Let's all go down to the village for refreshment.
At that magic word, refreshment, the whole crowd formed up in procession and headed back down the hill.
I will give the townspeople a good talking to, and then I think they will find him a much different dragon.
After the feast, the boy made a speech and told the villagers that the dragon was actually still alive, and he had been thinking things over, and he saw that there were 2 sides of every question, and he wasn't going to be an inconvenience anymore, and perhaps he'd stay and settle down there on the hill and be sort of a guardian. So they must be friends and not prejudiced, and go about fancying that they know everything that there is to be known, because they didn't by a long way. And he warned of the sin of making up stories and rumors and fancying other people would believe them just because they were plausible and highly colored. Then everyone went off quite contented.
1.
Banquets are always pleasant things, consisting mostly, as they do, of eating and drinking, but the especially nice thing is that it comes when something's over and there's nothing more to worry about. So the boy was happy because there had been a fight and he hadn't had to kill anybody, and met a fine lass who perhaps had a liking for him, being so full of imagination and courage. And the dragon was happy because there had been a fight and he was far from being hurt, and he had won popularity and a sure footing in society for himself as well as the entire dragons of the United National Front. And the princess was happy to rid herself of that itchy big dress and wear something a little more practical for all kinds of activities formerly prevented by all that lace and finery. So they all set off together, arm in arm, to bring the dragon home after a jolly day. The lights in the village were going out, and there were stars, and a late moon appearing. And as they turned the last corner, you could hear someone humming. I'm not sure, but I think it was the dragon.